So Steph, I think whenever you're ready. Great. Okay. Let me just get this up. Welcome everybody to the Bowen Island. Oh, oops, there we go. Started recording. Welcome to the Housing Advisory Committee for Bowen Island Municipality, Monday, April 17th, 2023. I'm going to put up for the approval of the agenda. We have one late item, which is Councillor Morris will report on a housing conference that she went to earlier this month. Any other changes or additions? Yep. Alison?
I think I just saw an email from the applicant.
Yes. Yeah, I did see that as well. I think, does that have to be?
So I think we should add that to the agenda under that item, correct, Steph?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we have those two additions. Any other questions or discussions or additions? No. Could I have somebody move the agenda? Yeah. Thank you, Ron. Seconded. Anyone? Thank you, Lois. Okay. Everybody in approval? Yep. Unanimous. Okay. Let's move along. So the agenda is approved. Minutes from the last meeting, which was only a couple of weeks ago on the 31st. Any comments on those?
They're not done.
They're not in
Oh,
the
they're
back.
not. Okay, so we will defer those. That's easy. That's a quick one. I was just scanning and thinking, I don't think I saw those. Yeah, it's only been 2 weeks, so no worries, Steph. So let's defer those to the next meeting. That's easy. Adoption minutes, public comments. So we do have, is anybody wanting to speak at public comments?
So can I speak at the time when we talk about our development then? Or should I use this time to speak?
I think now would be the time because the next item on the agenda is regarding your property. Okay. So why don't you go ahead and speak now, and then we'll sort of move on officially to the item on the agenda. So yeah, go ahead. You can have 5 minutes. Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak and present. And I did send out around earlier this morning what our proposal is. And it was basically spinning off the attachments that the chair of this committee had circulated, which was the City of Victoria's Inclusionary Housing and Community Amenity Policy and the City of Richmond's Low-End Market Rental Program requirements, both of which had recommended a per square foot based on the increase in density. So, and I kind of walked through, if you use the City of Victoria's policy, what the amount would be based on our, what the first reading bylaw has provided for, which allows for 7 lots, which would be an increase of density of 4. And based on that, the amount would be $56,507. And if we got the additional 2 lots, that would increase that amount to $71,571. So basically, the City of Victoria used $5 a square foot, but it also then allocated 70% of that to affordable housing and 30% to community amenities. And then when we go to the City of Richmond, they had a higher figure, which was $8 a square foot. And they didn't seem to have this allocation for housing or amenities. So using that formula under the existing zoning proposed bylaw, for the 7 lots, it would be $129,160. And for the additional 2 small lots, that would increase to $163,608. So our proposal, the other thing I did was I looked at the Bowen Island Housing Needs Report, which was published in 2020, and I think this committee is quite well versed in, and it estimates the annual average increase in households on Bowen Island to be 11 households per year for the years from 2016 to 2031. And I think there was some suggestion in previous minutes that I read from this committee that may be an underestimate. In any event, the other thing I looked at was how many rezoning applications has this committee considered since we started our application. in July of 2021, and there doesn't appear to be any new rezoning applications to increase zoning, increase density. And in fact, I think even if you look at Cape Roger Curtis lands, their rezoning application is reducing the amount of density. So I think the challenge we have on Bowen Island is trying to even get up to what the OCP density is. And that was what our initial intention was. And the other thing that I thought was interesting in the Bowen Island Housing Needs Report is it has these statements. The need for more housing options across the housing continuum is evident, and the supply of new housing development is not meeting the demonstrated demand for owned and rented housing on Bowen Island. The second point is Bowen Island will be well served by working with home builders and reducing the costs and the risks associated with developing. The third point was suggested actions include using municipal entitlements and incentives, including reducing fees, granting density bonuses, and otherwise working with developers on reducing their front-end costs. And the fourth point I got from the report was the community will be well served by working with developers to facilitate a diverse mix of affordable owner-occupied dwellings going forward, which I think we're trying to do with the additional 2 lots. The other guide that I attached was from the BC Ministry of Community, Sport and Cultural Development, and that's dated March 2014. And I think you will find that interesting because it specifically talks about affordable housing. And what it suggests is that significant community amenity contributions can have a negative impact on housing supply and therefore affordability. And it suggests a flexible, balanced approach, and that amenity contributions be based on density bonus zoning. So based on all of that and taking into consideration the City of Victoria and the City of Richmond, I kind of blended the 2 different ones, and this is what our proposal is. That we use $5 a square foot, not take the 70% discount on that, but $5 a square foot, and times that by the increase in maximum floor square footage. And if you use that figure, you get $80,725. And then if we can get the additional 2 lots approved by council, then this would be a higher dollar amount. It would be $8 a square foot for that increase in density. And that would be $34,432 for those 2 additional lots. And the total would be $115,157. And then the second point I'd like to raise is really the timing of payment. And what we propose is that the payment for the $80,000 roughly be based on the sale of any of the larger lots, and the $34,432 be based on the sale of any of the smaller lots. So that is our submission, and look forward to having a discussion about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for spelling that all out and putting it in writing as well, so we can all have a look at it. That's great. So I'm going to move on to the next item, which is, oh, and I keep losing my agenda. I forget the number, but we're going to go on to Daniel. There we go. 5.1. Oh, sorry, no, 4.1. Council referral, bylaw 598 for Arbutus Bay Road. So take it away, Daniel.
Thanks, Robin. I don't have a presentation. This is continuation of our discussion from the previous meeting regarding cash in lieu contributions. So at that last meeting, we went over the applicant's proposal of calculating, and committee members had flagged the City of Victoria, City of Richmond, other approaches that use sort of a simpler methodology for calculating. And then we circulated in the agenda this time that paper in terms of determining in lieu fees and sort of looking at, yeah, there are different methods people use for them and sort of the arguments and calculations, and kind of it goes to, do you go with a simpler fee calculation, you know, you go like per square foot and you can set it for the island? Or do you do very more detailed analysis of each development and say, well, this is what the calculation works out to for this project? And there's sort of challenges and benefits for each way. Like it's nice to have something that's clear and that applies across the board, or are you trying to consider that, well, this development is more costly to develop than this development, so the contribution should be lesser? Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know
Great.
if people of the
Thanks.
committee have thought more about it and have more thoughts or proposals they want to put forward.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Daniel. And I want to point out as well, I think there's really two topics for us to discuss following the last meeting. So cash in lieu, which definitely I think will be the most robust discussion, and that's what we'll jump into now. But I don't want to forget also talking about the number of lots, because that was something that we had recommended, these small lots. And Daniel, I might ask you, as the conversation's going in ahead of that, could you find some site plans? Because I can't remember, and it's easier for me to visualize of, you know, the proposed 7, and I think what we talked about where there was, I don't know if it's drawn up, but you know what I mean, just a visual. So when we get to that,
Sure.
We can maybe have a site plan we can refer to remind us, and if we do want to pursue that and make that recommendation to council. Okay, so Fritz, I saw your hand up. Would you like to jump in and talk about the cash in lieu? And I also did a little bit of more research myself, kind of looking into the different calculations, so I can kind of put that up on the screen and we can talk through it a little bit, just to talk about, I think there's 3 primary, it seems like in the industry, there's these 3 primary ways of calculating it. So we can look in those, or we can kind of focus in on one or the other if that's where the conversation takes us. So sorry, go ahead, Fritz.
Yeah, just in the presentation of the applicant, I kind of think that that report that says that more subsidies can actually have negative impact because but I think that doesn't really apply to affordable rental housing, because that doesn't sit in a normal market. You can flood the market, but you'll always need lower cost affordable rental housing. So if the money is used for that, I think that doesn't apply. And then secondly, I think the adding lots, I think that has to have a different calculation, because in my mind, you're talking about fairly significant amounts of money. And if this is a tool by giving people more lots or more strata lots, the infrastructure that you build, of course, you have to build more infrastructure, but not that much. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know exactly what the formula should be, but I just want to make everybody aware that if you have a road, you have the road. You know what I mean? There's not much more cost in the road. The septic system will get larger, but not exponentially. The hydro doesn't get more. So in a way, that value of that lot is greatly, a large proportion of the value of that lot is really additional value that is created. You know, for instance, if you now try to find a lot in a nice location on Bowen Island, what does it cost? 700,000 as a minimum, you know, maybe more, maybe 600 if you're lucky. But anyway, it's not 400. So it's a big number. If you use 600, which I believe is low for that area, but anyway, if 2/3 of that or half of that is additional value to make sure that the owner can, pay money in lieu, but it shouldn't be the other way around, that it's a great benefit and just kind of makes the whole development significantly more profitable. I don't mind if it gets more profitable, but there has to be some kind of a reasonable balance there.
Yeah, thanks, Fritz. That's interesting. And as I was reading through the City of Richmond's report, I think, or policy, whatever it was, I did also find something that they allow sort of a different, just looking back at my notes, they allow sort of an option to perform an economic analysis. And I think that the guideline on that was 75% of the uplift in land value. Which is interesting. I think that's probably more aimed at large scale developments where they're building high rises and everything. So the land value, actually isn't the biggest part of the formula. But anyways, I'll just throw that out. I thought that was interesting. But I think the important point you bring up, Fritz, is that I agree with you. Like, you're building one road. The idea of building a few extra driveways or a couple of extra water connections incrementally is not that much from, say, 7 lots to 9 lots. And then, the dollar value that you'd theoretically be getting for, those extra couple of lots is a significant amount of money. So I think that's kind of what you were bringing into discussion. Daniel, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. I just wanted to just give an overview of that, where the lots are in terms of, so this is the original application showing, so the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lots along sort of the southern end of the lot, and then this one larger one at the north, with the idea being that lot would have 2 of the smaller lots carved out of it. I know since this this proposal, the applicant has spent some time looking at sort of how that would be aligned. So I think they have ideas about, the road could be would be moved slightly in part response to some of the environmental reports. So it wouldn't be exactly like this, but this is generally what we're talking about in terms of this number 3, like the larger lot in the north would have the 2 smaller ones created out of it.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Daniel,
Yeah.
for the visual. That helps.
Mm.
Okay, did anybody else want to jump in with some thoughts or questions? Feel free to put your hands up. Yep, Tim, go ahead.
Another way that I thought of looking at this was looking at the land value, and perhaps rather than cash in lieu, having a portion of the land be dedicated over to the municipality. And that would get around the applicant having to come up with cash. And I guess I would, getting back to the 15% number, if we could get 15% of the lift, as Fritz was talking about, in that land value, I don't know, maybe that's a better way to think of it. We had a discussion about this, Robin, and I think we were thinking about just dedicating one lot, one of those small lots. But that's going to end up being, I think, more than 15% of the total lift, and it's hard to calculate that based on what all the costs are in terms of developing all the lots or creating all the lots. So at the end of the day, I'm just wondering if there's some way, following up on what Fritz said, we can look at considering a cash contribution, which is related to the value of the 2 extra lots being created.
And Tim, what's the reasoning behind it would be based on the 2 extra lots, if those were, because again, we don't know that council will approve that. They might have 0 interest in 2 extra lots. So yeah, it wouldn't apply to the overall development. It wouldn't apply to sort of the extra square footage. You're saying it would apply to the 2 extra lots?
Well, you raise a good point. I'm not sure.
Okay,
That-
yeah, just
that would be-
brainstorming.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. Just checking in. Okay, Fritz, yeah, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute. Fritz, you're on mute. Oh, Fritz, you're on mute.
Okay, in response to that, I think you can say that if the original proposal, there's maybe a formula in place, but to make this work, because it's not enough money to make this workable for the applicant, we say you can create 2 additional lots, right? That gives you a significant lift. So then to make this fall into place, what is the lift? So I think that if the, instead of trying to calculate, I understand that if you're an applicant, you want to pay as little as possible. But obviously, there has to be an incentive. So if you say, okay, it doesn't work without the 2 additional lots, that's what I remember from the last meeting. But if the additional 2 lots are there, then it's a slam dunk. You know what I mean? That's going to work, right? Okay, so then based on that, you just can ask for a proposal. Like, what is the applicant willing to pay? It's not a calculation to get the minimum. No, it is something that convinces council to proceed with this application. So for instance, if you say okay, here's it with the original application, but it doesn't work. It doesn't financially work. Then you say to implement the policies for affordable housing. Then you say, okay, what if we give you 2 additional lots? Now you're negotiating. I don't care about the 15% or the 5% or the 7%. These are all artificial numbers. Maybe they work in some municipalities, but here, together with the applicant, we just want to have a successful project. And it has to work. It has to work financially for the applicant. If the applicant makes some more money, I'm all for it, right? But it has to be a negotiated, fair, balanced split that is worthwhile for council and worthwhile. It's an amount that actually makes a difference in getting affordable housing realized.
Mhm. Thanks, Fritz. It reminds me a bit of that option I was just talking about with Richmond, where they do the cash dollar per square foot, but then you sort of have the option of doing an economic analysis or something like that. And if I keep referring back, it's I'm trying to aim for if hopefully our discussions today we can come out with something that's applicable in the future as well, and then we could work towards kind of adding that to the affordable housing policy. So it'd be nice if there was something that was clear and easy, like the dollar per square foot thing, because then that's predictable. In the future, people doing rezonings can kind of build that into their calculations coming in, knowing what they're in for. But then there's also the option, right? If you want to kind of, like Fritz is saying, like this is a negotiation, a one-on-one case, like a per case basis, and it's that kind of discussion. So anyways, there's all sorts of stuff out there. Ron, go ahead.
2 points. First of all, Robin, I really think you're overvaluing simplicity here. I don't attach a big premium to having something that's easy to look at, like so many dollars per square foot. And I think that the attraction of that is a bit illusory anyway, because next year building costs will be different, and so that X dollars per square foot will have to be changed according to some pretzel-like formula. So why not just work with that formula from the beginning? Second point, there's some confusion here. At least there's confusion in my mind as to exactly what the affordable housing policy is. So far, the discussion has suggested that the affordable housing policy is to capture 15% of the lift in value enabled by the rezoning. I think I've got that right. And that interpretation is consistent with the EMICO's previous submission, in which she quoted a planning department submission to council, which said the net increase in floor area through draft bylaw 598 would be 1,500 square meters. 15% of this amount would be 225 square meters for 2,422 square feet of affordable housing. And then EMICO went on to calculate the value of that. Well, with respect to the development department, I don't think that's the policy of the. I don't think that's the Bowen Island municipality's affordable housing policy. I would note here that EMICO has not, in fact, quoted the affordable housing policy here in her application, and what that policy is, from my reading, is you take 15% of the entire development, and then look at the difference between break even. Look at the difference between rental, average rental, and break even, and take 15% of that, and that's how you work it out. And that results in an entirely different number. And from my calculations, incidentally, that comes out to. I'm sorry, I don't have the number right here, but
Yep, that's okay. Do we know? That's a very good point, Ron, and I agree. I was also referring back to the Bowen Island affordable housing policy, and under the section page 2 affordable housing contributions D, item D, it says 15% of the gross floor area as affordable housing. So that's part of a longer sentence, but so it gives the example if that the gross floor area of the project is 500 square meters, that it will include 75 square meters of affordable housing units. So yeah, to me, it's clear that it's about the gross area, floor area of the project. So maybe Daniel, would you be able to clarify those numbers and if there has been discussion at the planning level or at the council level on how this is going to be applied in this case?
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes back to even our discussion with this committee early on about this difference between gross and net. And so in my report that went in February, I did outline like what the total floor area in the bylaw would be. And then I compared that with what it would be under the current zoning, given the proposed maximum dwellings. So it's sort of a challenge with the policy that it speaks to gross, but I mean, but the challenge being like what to do in a rezoning that adds incremental floor area to a zone or to a property. So the policy kind of envisions like no development, and then that's the gross development permitted through the rezoning, versus if you could imagine like a property that allowed 5 dwellings and added 1 dwelling through the rezoning or something, or allowed 10 already and was looking for an incremental increase to allow 11. You know, it sort of almost doesn't make sense to then go, okay, it's 15% of 11 dwelling units when they're already zoned for 10. Nobody would ever come to rezone. So the my report says, okay, this is what is currently permitted, and I think I have 1,125 square meters of floor area based on their allowed 3 dwellings, and we had a maximum in the bylaw of 375, and then saying this bylaw would allow 7 dwellings of 375 square meters, total floor area 2,625. So, and then I say the net increase would be 1,500 square meters. 15% of this would be 225 square meters, thinking that if the goal was to seek rental housing provided on site, that 225 would be the amount of rental housing on site. And then I know we have a discussion, maybe I'll just share that portion. So essentially this is the table showing total floor area currently permitted, which is not entirely true in that this as total floor area permitted in terms of the zoning allows 3 dwellings. This bylaw would impose a maximum floor area of 375, which doesn't currently exist in the zone. Currently, the zoning actually allows greater floor area, but it's looking at this bylaw would have this maximum. So the total floor area would be permitted. Then the bylaw would allow 7 dwellings, floor area of 375 square meters, total floor area 2,625. So you could say, well, the policy says use 15% of 2,625. Instead of what I've done is said the net increase would be 1,500 square meters, and then saying, okay, 15% of this would be 225 square meters. And then, so I think, you know, we've had the discussion last meeting in terms of if we're charging per square foot, if that's the goal of the policy, say the equivalent cash in lieu contribution is per square foot, you know, are you charging it on the total, like the increase of floor area of 1,500 square meters, or the you know, which probably makes sense, but then you would sort of do the calculation that it's a value that represents the value increase, but based on this number.
Ron, go ahead.
Well, I respectfully disagree totally with Daniel. I mean, the Bowen Island Affordable Housing Contribution Policy is very clear. It refers to 15% of the gross floor area as affordable housing, period. However, and so in other words, if you're planning a development on which you're not asking for any upzoning, you're not asking for any variances at all, you're still asked to provide 15% as affordable housing. However, the policy also states, blah, 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 development will be encouraged to create. So there's no absolute requirement that one require 15% development, 15% affordable housing, but developers will be encouraged. And so I think in this case, the appropriate way to starting point for the discussion should be to encourage this developer to provide cash in lieu comparable to the departure from break-even costs on 15% of the entire development.
Okay. Thanks, Ron. And I was just doing some quick math there just so we can compare numbers. But Tim, go ahead. You had your hand up.
Yeah, I think the problem we're facing here is that the affordable housing policy, when it was written, didn't contemplate the variety of ways that the development might proceed. And it was really aimed at a developer doing a multifamily complex where 15% of the units that they built would be identified as affordable housing, and therefore would have, whether they were rental or ownership, they would sell or rent at an affordable amount, which is specified by the definition of what affordable housing is. It didn't contemplate the very situation that we're facing now, where we've got an existing property with development, and now we're adding more lots. And we've talked about the fact that actually building affordable housing there and having it being administered in effect by the municipality in terms of making sure there was a proper process for who got to either buy or rent that, and that the rent or purchase price was affordable. We don't have enough guidance in the policy, and so I think what we need to do here really with the municipality is create a new policy that is more clear and covers all these various situations, and maybe then we can talk about what would be a reasonable, amount per square foot and what square footage that would apply to. But in this case, I really agree with Fritz in terms of maybe what we should be doing is saying to the applicant, you want this rezoning, you'd like the extra 2 lots, we will, that will make the difference of making this viable or not viable for you. What do you propose to contribute in terms of an affordable housing contribution, if it were cash in lieu? And I think we've identified that we would prefer cash in lieu here, because then we can apply it directly to an affordable housing project that would probably be closer to the Cove and would make more sense to administer by the municipality.
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be, and just going back to what we did in Whistler, a lot of the rezonings where we got affordable housing contributions, we actually said to the developer, okay, you've brought your rezoning application in here. What is your affordable housing contribution going to be? Because we've identified that we need affordable housing, and we need to have some contribution from the lift we're giving you through the rezoning towards that. So it might be easier to, in this particular case, take that approach and have the applicant make a proposal, like the proposal that has been made, and then have council decide, staff and council decide if that is enough or it should be more, based on the need for affordable housing rather than a per square footage formula at this point.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tim. So Allison first and then Ron. And I just did also want to point out my reading of the Richmond guidelines were that it also applies to the gross square footage of the project. So $5 or $6 or whatever theirs is, just to throw that in. But I liked what Tim was saying about it might be nice for us to take a step back. We'll see Allison and Ron have comments, but maybe take a step back and just go back to kind of, I think, what the intention of the affordable housing policy is. Like Tim just said, it was to actually create units, and it was to create 15%. So just like the policy said, if you're building 500 square meters, 75 square meters, 15% is an affordable housing unit. And agreeing that we're doing cash in lieu, maybe use that as sort of, because that's the intention, right? Is like, how do we actually get one built? Maybe we can kind of mull that over while we've got Allison and then Ron. So go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, trying to get my thoughts in order here. Excuse my throat. So when we went to the housing project, it was some of the other communities, they allow an increase in density in order for affordable housing. And so these extra 2 lots are an increase in density, and there's a significant community amenity coming along with this rezoning, which is a large donation to the community foundation and I don't think the applicant isn't doing this because they're wanting to make money. They're doing it because they have to settle direction in a will. And I guess I had the thought about, well, create the lots and transfer the ownership of 1 or 2 of them to the municipality. And then we could either, sell them to somebody or put the money in the fund or whatever. And the applicant has made a proposal of how much they're willing, would like to pay. They haven't just pulled a number out of the air. They've tried to sort of come value. I kind of like the idea of the 15% based on the net increase in value. And I guess they could, had Maggie just passed away and said, divide my estate equally, they'd only be wanting to make 3 lots. There's 3 kids. So, but because of her will, the significant amount of parks she wants to donate and creating lots to have a fund for the amount for the community foundation. So I guess, are people telling me that they don't think the 115 is enough? I mean, and all the ones we've done are, multifamily, the pub, the distillery, and Belterra. And they've all got housing. They're all rentals as well, or 2 rentals and one's low, purchase. So there isn't a lot of track record, and the money that we've got in the Housing Reserve Fund right now didn't come from somebody wanting to build or do a rezoning. So, so I guess my sort of question is, is the 115 reasonable, or are people wanting a lot more money? Because there's a huge amount of infrastructure for only, what do we got, 7 lots in total, Daniel?
That's the current proposal, I think, is 7. Yeah.
Including the existing 2, or 7 lots. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
think
know Fritz is right, the incremental cost, I mean, but, and all the money they're going to have, and the timing proposal sort of, I think, makes sense because it's a cash flow problem.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think another good thing that you've brought to my attention anyways, just to keep in mind is, this affordable housing contribution is not the only contribution they are doing, right? They are giving a significant amount of land to the municipality as a park. It sounds like, I'm not privy to all of the details, but I think that's good to keep in mind as well, that they are actually out of the economics of this development. They are contributing other things as well. So it's good to keep in mind. Okay, next, Ron, and then Fritz. He's still there.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything that Tim said, but just to try to put this in context, I think we should remember that the default option inevitably this is going to come down to negotiation, say they should pay this much or they should pay that much. Let's remember that the default option is no rezoning at all. And that's not such a terrible option. Looking at the material that Emiko submitted, she quotes the Bowen Island Housing Needs Report as saying, the need for more housing options across the housing continuum is evident, and the supply of new housing development is not meeting the demonstrated demand for owned and rented housing. Well, the need for housing options across the continuum, no. I don't think there's a need for more single-family homes. I think that's pretty much been the consensus of the Housing Advisory Committee for the last couple of years. In fact, to the contrary, more single-family homes on an island that has finite resources inevitably means that at some point there will be less opportunity for there to be rental accommodation or multis. So I don't think we should easily step into this this rezoning. And if it's not financially viable with the with 7 lots, well, that's too bad for the developer, but it's not really the municipality's problem.
Thanks, Ron. Fritz, are you still with us? Can't see him. And did he? Oh, looks like maybe he's dropped off. Okay. So, I mean, I think that's an interesting point, Ron, to bring up as a discussion, because we have numerous times, mentioned, we don't need any more single family homes on Bowen. We need lots of other kinds of diverse housing. And I'm trying to remember back, because I think this is at least the 4th meeting I think we're discussing this rezoning. And I think some of the early discussions, as Tim mentioned earlier today, was that this isn't the ideal location to build affordable housing, to build those diverse units. Its location, how far away it is, all of those kinds of things in the Cove. It's not near transit at all, those kinds of things. So I feel like that was kind of something we all agreed on. But you're right to sort of point that out, Ron, that this sort of recommending, or whatever we do as the committee, this development, it is saying, hey, we can have 5 more or whatever it is single family houses on the island, which yeah, is that really what we need? And we all pretty much know it's not what we need. I don't know, any other thoughts on this one? I mean, as we've been discussing, I'm almost sort of leaning towards, and what Allison was saying with the extra density, like other examples in other communities, that the council grants the extra density so that the extra units can be for the extra density can be for the affordable housing portion of it. So, I mean, that's interesting, going back to kind of what Tim was saying about, if we grant these extra lots, does 1 lot go to the municipality and that's it? And it's easy, it's straightforward. And for the applicants, it's, I've not cash out of hand, I guess, like it's not like they have to come up with these tens of thousands or hundred thousands of dollars out of pocket. So I don't know, is that something worth considering as well? In terms of what we can make the recommendation to council. And maybe we also don't have to make one single recommendation. Maybe we can say, hey, here are different options that we've discussed and we think are valid. So one being create an extra lot and it goes to the municipality. One being, as the applicants demonstrated, this $1 per square foot. We have a couple of references. It's somewhere between $5 and $10 a square foot. I would argue of the gross floor area. We can discuss that. And then, yeah, I don't know, maybe there's another thing, but, maybe we don't have to come to a complete consensus on which method, because it really isn't our decision. We're making recommendations to council, right? And hopefully helping them wade through all of the, do the hard work of wading through all this in the discussion. And then we present them with, our educated and discussed kind of suggestions. So what do people think of that? That maybe we kind of make we recommend that you consider, these couple of ways of calculating this, or, and I guess maybe we go to Tim and Allison, if that would be helpful, or would it be easier for you as council just to have one single recommendation? Allison, yeah.
I think it would be better to have a single recommendation to council, but maybe it needs a report that goes with it that says we also considered the following and ruled them out, and this seemed to be the easiest one to administer. Or we have a report that says, we considered all these options, and in this case, we've also considered, this isn't a developer out to make them, doing a development. This is a different situation, and for that reason, we're recommending acceptance of the applicant's offer, or creating 1 extra lot that be sold and the proceeds go to the municipality.
Okay. Tim, do you have any feedback on that? And Fritz, we'll get back to you. Sorry, I think you're back. We'll get to you in a moment.
Yeah.
Yes, I would I'd agree with Councillor Morris on that. We've got a tough problem here in that we're trying to apply a guideline that doesn't really apply. And so again, I do think we need to step back for future developments. and come up with something more workable. To Ron's point about do we even need this rezoning? We need rezonings in order to get affordable housing contributions. I don't see any other way we're going to get them. And so I would say, yes, we're going to get some more single family homes, but we don't want to be encouraging more single family homes, but single family homes that will generate affordable homes, I think is definitely worthwhile. And I agree with the idea of one recommendation with a summary of other things that were considered. And ultimately, I'm thinking, based on what I was saying earlier, let's figure out what we have a proposal from the developer. If we think that's reasonable, that may be the most straightforward way to go forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. Fritz, go ahead.
Yeah, we just had a power outage in the office and it's still out. And then the
Oh, no.
Wi-Fi disappeared, and I have some really intelligent people in the office, and they managed to pair the laptop with my iPhone. Just
Perfect.
unbelievable. Anyway, so having said that, there's a few things that I wanted to mention more in general. I find floor space a very crude kind of primitive way of measuring, and I tell you why. I'll give you one example. Let's say, I'll give you an example where there's floor space. You say you have a single family lot and you're allowed to build a fair amount of square footage, right? Now you can, let's say, subdivide it as a duplex, right? So let's say you could have built, give an example, let's say a 4,000 square feet you can build. Now suddenly you can build 2,000 square feet on that same lot. That square footage is now worth far more because there's a buyer that wants that house. It's just the relationship between square footage and what you can do. Like, for instance, the moment you set a limit on the square footage of the lot, that to some degree establishes what that square footage is worth, because there's a buyer that is willing in the market to pay so much for that square footage, right? Now, if you allow smaller lots, that value actually goes up because that's the market where the square footage is worth the most. You know what I mean? So the thing is that you have to look at that. Then what I also noticed is that, yes, we're always talking about, payment in lieu for below market, affordable housing, but there's still that other objectives that we have as the housing committee is to create a variety of smaller forms of housing, right? So to do that, and if you're either far away from the cove or closer, somewhere halfway, wherever that is, that in itself is an objective as well. And I think that if the benefit is small, like for instance, if you say to an established single family neighborhood, we're going to have more units in your neighborhood. A lot of people say, why? We don't want that. We're quite happy here, bugger off, right? So then, but if there's a real incentive for the community, because it creates more smaller houses, it creates more value, and part of that value, there's this double value, this value that it creates more smaller forms of housing, plus, because it creates so much more financial value, it also creates the opportunity to have larger contributions to the affordable housing fund. You see, I mean, so you kind of win, it's a win-win, but there has to be an incentive for where the increase in density takes place. And I find here, what I find interesting about this area, it is all single family, and most of them are larger homes. But if they're smaller homes, and they can be really small, then you create that variety of housing, and people that want to stay in a neighborhood can stay in the neighborhood, and therefore they will actually like it. So you have to come up with a plan that is liked, that creates value, and then it can do both.
Okay, thank you, Fritz. Any other comments or thoughts? I'm sort of gathering. I like the idea that maybe we type up some notes or a little report or memo or something discussing all of the different methods that we've talked about. And at the moment, I'm seeing, and Ron's typing some some numbers into there. Maybe Daniel, if you could double check, what is the proposed total development? Because I think Ron's got a number there. And I guess in square feet, because we keep referring to the dollar per square foot, not square meter. So maybe we can just do the math on that. But the three methods we've got that we're contemplating is one, what the proponent has proposed. So, and I want to just double check, I believe it's in the area of $115,000. So that's what they've proposed. The second one is a slightly different calculation using $1 per square foot, maybe that we determine. My interpretation of them, of a few different references, is that it's on the gross square footage. So it'd be interesting. So I've sort of done very quick numbers just to kind of start comparing them. What does that look like? And do we know how many square feet, Daniel?
Yeah, so I have that calculation of square, I mean, it's square meters, but we can convert.
Yeah.
Square meters permitted in the bylaw. So the gross in the bylaw, so 7 dwellings, 375 is 2,625 square meters.
And that's 28. I'm just doing the quick math on Google. 28,793. So why don't we just round up to 28,800 just for some math? 28,800.
Sorry, 28,000 square feet?
Sorry. Yeah, is that right? I want to make sure I'm not mixing up my decimal points. Yeah. So because it's like very, very roughly 10 times. I know it's a little bit off, but if you're just kind of vastly estimating, it's about 10 times. So 28,800. And if we did dollars per square feet, so I'm just doing a bit of math so we can kind of start comparing numbers. So the applicants proposed 115. If we do $5 a square foot times the 2,880, 5 times 2,880 is 144,000. And if we do more like 7, which is a different average of the Richmond and Victoria's, times 2,880 is 200. Let's just call it 200. It's just over 200,000. And then the other one that we're contemplating would be thanks. Yes, so the applicant has just put into the chat that the existing zoning does allow for a much larger amount. So I mean, it's something for sure that we've talked about because of the anomaly of not anomaly, how Bowen Island calculates its it doesn't have FSR in a lot of areas. It doesn't have maximum square footage. So you're right, it's a very, very large amount as to what could be built on right now. So sorry, to recap, 3 proposals. Applicant is 115, some version of the dollars per square foot, which is somewhere between 144 and 200,000, just as a ballpark. And then the idea of maybe, do we allow extra lots, however many lots that is? We're talking about maybe 2 lots are allowed and 1 goes to the municipality. That would be a very different amount. I don't know exactly. I don't think any of us knows, but it would certainly be in the, I'm just guessing here, the $500,000, $600,000 range to have a single lot on Bowen, right? If that's given to the municipality and then the municipality sells it, the value of that lot's somewhere in that range as a ballpark.
Sorry, Robin, I think Greg's had.
Yep, Steph. Oh, sorry, I haven't seen that. Yeah, thank you for jumping in. Because he's yeah, Greg, please go ahead. Sorry, I've ignored you there. Go ahead.
No problem. I'm sorry about my audio. I'm in a car on headphones, so I'm not even sure you can hear me. But,
yeah, no, it sounds good. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, and I do have to hop off shortly and get on to another meeting, but I just wanted to just comment briefly that from where I'm sitting, there's a couple of things. One is that there is a policy in place that the policy that's in place or the guidance that's in place needs to be reworked and rewritten. And so we take that and put that over there and table it and get to work on that. The second thing is that the applicant has been patient and needs us to make some sort of decision or an attempt to move forward such that they can get on with their lives. And so I think it's incumbent on us to do that and not necessarily push something back again. Or if we are pushing it back with 3 options and then it's council's call, that's fine. But at least come to some sort of firm decision about how to move forward so the applicant can have some security. And the last thing I'll just say briefly is that, in calculating and negotiating and coming to these numbers, whether it's 115 or 200 or whatever, I think to Allison's point, there has to be some consideration of other things that the applicant has already provided to council with the park, etc. And the last question I had is, do we have any guidance? This fund, I keep hearing cash in lieu of to a fund. Does it exist? Has there been cash payments? Who manages it? What direction or what policies surround how this money is accounted for and managed? Or would that be part of the writing of a new policy? But that's likely a question for another time. And with that, I'll yield the floor.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Greg. That was
very
a valuable
quickly.
contribution. Allison can jump in
Yeah,
quickly to answer about the Housing Reserve Fund.
We have created a housing reserve fund, and this is the first contribution that would be made to the housing reserve fund. There's money due to a rezoning development. There's money in there, but it came more as a penalty payment for somebody that did something they shouldn't have done. Yeah.
And to answer your other question, Greg, it's administered by the municipality. It's their money. They have it. It's in a special fund, and it's allocated for affordable housing. I don't know if there's anything more specific than that, but it's up to them to determine how they want to spend that money. So it's in the control of the municipality.
And we haven't
Thank
had any
you.
money to spend until this year anyhow.
Yeah, exactly. This year's been in the last year has been the first contribution. So it was set up by the last council, and then we're actually now starting to see ways that money's coming into it. Okay, so I think just trying to summarize, and we've still got time in the meeting, so we can still continue our discussion, but that's kind of the summary that I'm getting to is we have the applicant's proposal, we have some version of the dollars per square foot in our own calculation because the applicant's done one version. We could do a slightly different one, and then contemplating the value of the extra lot. And two of them are fairly similar numbers. I think the third is quite a different number in terms of value and what the municipality would see. So yeah, I don't know. Do people have thoughts on one or the other, or is there another one we should contemplate? Because again, there's these two other, and I see you, Fritz, just a minute. There are these two other methods, and I hear you, Ron, about sometimes it seems easy to take the easy way out, just simple dollars per square foot, but there are other versions of this that are just more complex calculations. And I could show you some examples of them that were in this report. Maybe just if everybody's got a little bit of time, we could actually just look at those, and that might spark something else as well. Fritz, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that I believe what Allison said. I mean, I've been in the dark for a little while, but what I understand, and I think that's important, is that there has to be a real split. Like what is dealt with through amenity zoning, and what is dealt with a formula for the affordable housing fund, right? Because like this proposal, I think Allison said it brings already a park, and as you know, developers may have a playground, they may have all kinds of things, right? So that there has to be a reasonable, if you want to have a formula that works for the affordable housing fund, I think that should be standalone. And then there is another component that is negotiated, which is to bring it to the tipping point that the agreement falls into place. And that is through amenity zoning. And that is the same as has been done all the time. And you can calculate whatever you like. You cannot calculate that. It's subjective. I mean, what's a park worth? What's an amenity? What's a playground worth? What is land worth? And I just want to say one more time about square footage, that if you have a lot and you can build, for instance, 4,000 square feet, the value has something to do. What are you allowed to do with that 4,000 square feet? If I can build 2 houses or 4 units or 5 units, that makes a huge difference. So the number of units relates directly to the value of. So like I'm saying, if you calculate something that has an undetermined value, then what's the point of that? Like, you see what I mean?
No, that's great, Fritz. It actually leads into, why don't I share my screen? Let me tidy up here because I've got a lot going on. Why don't I share my screen and see if we can talk through these other couple of options that this report shows. Let me just bring it up here. Let's see, where is it in all my things here? Okay. Oh, where's the one? There's one that, sorry, that shows these examples. So that I think is really helpful. So this one, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Okay.
Subdivision that creates value, right? That's the bottom line. Subdivision and strata lots or whatever creates value.
Yeah. Okay. So there we go. Sorry, I have to do this. So hopefully everybody can see my screen. You're probably seeing yourself at the bottom there. So this one, there's these two methods addressed in this report, and the dollar per square foot's the third, which we've talked about quite a bit. So the affordability gap method, I'm just going to kind of go down to the example here. It takes the rent, and AMI is the annual median income. So that's what that stands for. So it takes the rent at, I believe, market. So the market rent is here. It takes what 50% of that would be with a utility allowance. So then it takes it off of that. And then that's what the affordable monthly rent would be. And then it goes this rent loss per unit per month. So I would need more explanation. So the gap between the two, I guess that's what it's saying. And then it uses the cap value of 5%. Again, I'm not an expert at these financial things, so somebody else might understand them a bit more, but it is a very sort of formulaic thing with things that we can, we can find these numbers.
That sort of matches Amico's first submission, right? The one we had the last time.
Yeah, I'd have to look back. Yeah, I'd have to double check. I think it does sound similar because I know she used cap rates and all that stuff. So maybe we look back at that as well. But anyway, this is one method of determining it. And I think maybe it's getting a little bit at what you're saying, Fritz, because it actually sort of talks about, the creation of units, and it's sort of more of a unit-based thing, or, as opposed to just square feet. And then the next example is this production cost example. And so it takes, what does it cost to produce one unit of affordable housing? So it uses the example 300,000, which I think is not realistic on Bowen, but we'll use this, look at this through this example. And then it says the maximum housing expense of that 50% of the annual median income per month with utilities, all of these other things. It comes up with a net operating income per year, and then uses that cap rate, and then comes up with these fees. And I think you're right, Allison, this is similar to what the applicant proposed the first time. I'd have to look back at it again to understand how it was applied and all of those things. So I just want to throw this out there because there are these different methods of calculating. And then the dollars per square foot. So do we think it's worth putting any of those in the mix? I guess we could put them in the report, and I could refer back to the applicant's first submission and just kind of compare that, because I don't have that fresh in my mind. It's a while back, and we could put that in a report. But I guess are we sort of reaching a consensus? What do people feel is the one, if we take the few different methods that we've discussed, is there one that everybody's kind of leaning towards that we could make a clear recommendation to council that we think is an acceptable contribution?
Yes, from my perspective, the first two, the last two examples, they're more multi-unit, if you're building a
We're about to have to phone you back, okay?
Yeah, I agree. Yes, I think and then like Tim has said, I think that's what the original Bowen affordable housing policy was based on, sort of multi-units,
that's
units
what
being devoted. So
we clearly decided that we wanted the developer to build the housing.
Yeah,
And,
exactly. So I think that's a good argument that the other comparisons, these dollar per square foot ones that we have examples from local communities, Richmond, Victoria, that use that method. Especially Richmond has that dollar value for single family home development. Like, I think that's just our best reference, right? Like it's very, it's there, it's been used. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to find where they get that dollar amount from and what the reasoning is, but interestingly, I don't know where that comes from, but we do have those amounts, and it's between $6 and $8 in Richmond for single family development, and it's anywhere between 5 and 10 in Victoria, depending on sort of the density and all of that stuff. So I think it would be pretty easy for us to come up with an average. Like, obviously 6 to 8 is $7, 5 to 10 is $7.50. So we could, round down to $7 or, whatever. We can kind of, I think, have a pretty reasonable rationale for coming up with $1 per square foot. If we wanted to go that way as one of the options we're considering. And I think, I sort of did that math. I don't know if I shared my screen on that, but that one was somewhere between 144 if it's $5 and 200,000 And that was on the gross square footage though. So maybe that's a point of discussion. Do we do it on the gross square footage or on the sort of extra square footage? Okay, Fritz.
Yeah, I think something simpler that is easier to understand for not just for council, but also for the public, is that, for instance, if you would know what would you need in additional funding to build, let's say, a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom unit in the Cove, okay? And if you say, okay, I need $300,000 more to build a 3-bedroom unit or so, right? Whatever, there's a number there. Then now you go back to amenity zoning. Now somebody on the island wants to do something. Let's say they have a large acreage, right? And step away from this particular proposal. And let's say they have 10 acres or so, right? And they say, look, you know, now it becomes amenity zoning. I have some park space that I can offer, and I can contribute to a number of units that can be built in the Cove. Now you're kind of negotiating in things that are real. You know what I mean? So then and also for the public to understand it, they said, from look, the advantage of is that there's smaller lots created here, right? That implements the objective to have a more variety of smaller homes, you know, available island-wide. That's one. But then you can see that, and you say, well, okay, I pay for one bedroom unit to pull that one off, to make that realistic, you know, like and then you say, from okay, there is a measurable result, and you can actually negotiate. So for instance, if you have a large property, you can, and then for council, it is just amenity zoning. They say, oh, we get a park, we get a playground, you know, we get some affordable, smaller forms of housing in that neighborhood that people can move to, and there is 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 or 100 units are made feasible. Now everybody understands it, but I find this kind of, I find it a bit of an accountant approach, like I'm doing my income tax or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You calculate the shit out of everything and you don't actually know if it has any
I'm going to take exception to that,
It's
Fritz.
realistic. Okay, you got the drift, right?
I like that. So where my mind was going with that discussion, Fritz, is again, kind of taking that step back of what the intention of the affordable housing policy is. Let's say this goes through and there's 7 or 9. I don't think it matters too much at this point. 7 lots, 7 units, right? 7 dwelling units. What's 15% of that? You know, and it's 1 roughly, right? And so if we say, okay, well, you're getting, and I guess it kind of comes down to that argument. Is it the whole project or the additional project?
Yeah, I think you have to start from the other end. You have to start. Okay. You have to start, and you know that you're birds yourself, right? So you know what it takes to build the money that you need to build an additional unit. You know, and it's maybe 1, 2, or 3 bedroom, and they have a value. It's an entity. It is something. You know, it has a number, right? Yeah. It's not something you calculate or have to argue about. That is what it costs now to pull the thing off, okay? And call those things apples or oranges if you want, right? A basket, right? And then a proposal comes forward. And now I think for council, it's much easier to actually weigh the benefits. It's like, you know, if somebody contributes something, right, or a chair in the community center, right? You can pay $2,500. You get a little sticker on the chair, right? I asked my wife if she wants a sticker. I haven't convinced her yet, but I just do it actually. But anyway, but having said that, what I'm saying is that then you can say this development has produced the following. It has realized 3 affordable housing units. It has provided park space, and it has provided a mix of affordable housing. Now, then everybody understands it. The public, you can put it in the undercurrent, whatever you like.
Yeah. And so how do we calculate how many units of affordable housing this proposal should contribute? if we
Well,
use
it's
that
not
method
council.
as
It's
an
like any
exercise.
other. It's like any
Okay.
other.
So it wouldn't be a
job.
formula. It would be negotiated. It wouldn't be this 15%. It would be negotiated.
No, you step away from it. It becomes more, and also it has something to do with the motivation of the developer. I mean, the developer knows all kinds of things, right? But what may benefit their proposal. For instance, you may say that the parkland that is contributed is an amenity. A developer may say, "Well, I'm fine. I got rid of it, and I got 10 more units." And I don't have to maintain that land. So it's many times not true. Like it's more like you don't know what in the background happens, what influences the decision of the developer. And you do also, you know that council is also driven by local circumstances. It's all political. Those two forces, they come together, and they have and they start to negotiate. And there's nothing wrong with negotiating, because in the end, you have an agreement. And if both parties are happy with the agreement, then both parties are happy.
Okay, thanks, Fritz. Ron, go ahead. And you're on mute. Just I'm preemptively saying, oh, you're on mute, Ron.
Okay, I think we have two options. One is we consider all these complex possibilities and come up with a recommendation for council. And I can't believe that we review all these complexities and come up with the fair, right answer in the next few minutes. Plan B is we could just go with the methodology that the developer has put forth, except instead of a contribution of $5 for part and $8 on another part, just say $8 across the board and recommend to council, ask for $164,000, period.
Okay. Okay, so we would take, I'm just trying to keep track of them all. So you would say $8 a square foot.
Times 20,000.
Okay.
Square feet.
Square foot times, and the 20,000 is that the additional?
That's the total.
Oh, so you're thinking the total, because the total is actually 28,000 square feet.
Ooh.
Yeah. So just checking in, is it the total gross? Because I think there's a little bit of a, a nuance there. Are we doing, if we apply, if we're going to propose as one of the options we considered dollars per square feet, is it applied to the whole development, the gross, which in this case is about 28,000 square feet, or is it just to the uplift, right? So they currently have.
Emeco's proposal seems to refer to only 20,000 square feet.
That's the uplift.
I think that's the uplift, exactly. Yeah, so that's the differentiation. So 28,000 is the total, approximately 20 is the additional. So three dwellings are allowed at the moment, and they're asking for the additional 7 or 9.
Okay, so
sorry,
it's 28,000
up to 7 or 9 is the gross, yes, of the entire thing at, I guess, 7 lots. Is that right, Daniel? So yeah, if we recommended the additional 2 at 9, it would be slightly different.
Okay. So ask for $224,000.
Okay.
So Victoria's
Thanks,
enrichment are based on the net, the difference between what the existing zoning is and what the uplift would be.
So my reading is Victoria's based on the addition. My reading is Richmond's based on the gross. But I want to go. Daniel had his hand up, and then Tim.
I was just going to add. I pulled up the OCP that has a policy about this contribution. So policy 359. And so it just says all new development of 3 or more units requiring rezoning will provide 15% of the gross floor space as non-market. And then it says where, or make an equivalent financial contribution.
Okay.
But I guess when I was reading that, I was like, well, is that, are the existing houses on the site, is that part of the new development of the rezoning? Or would we say, no, that's not new development. The gross is what we're calling the net. Like the gross is, the new development is what's being acquired through the rezoning.
Yeah, and I think what is also to be appreciated is that, we are tweaking it a little bit for this circumstance, because the existing property does allow, a massive amount of square footage because of the, it's basically based on site coverage and height. So you could build tens and tens of thousands square feet as it is right now. So we are sort of creating our own little calculation to somehow figure this out. So I don't think that I would object to it being on the extra. So, they're allowed 3, that comes off. And then whatever the extra, whether it's 7 units or 9 units, whichever one we decide in the end to recommend, I think we word it in that it is the gross square footage less the existing 3 that are allowed. So whatever the balance of that is, that's how many square meters, square feet, and it's times this dollar amount. So I think that's an easy thing to craft. And then whether it's 7 or 9, because that's a separate discussion, I think we can craft that proposal. And personally, I think I'm a fan of it because, again, I know I don't mean to take the easy road, but it is simple. It's easy for everyone to understand. We have 2 established communities with these dollars. We can kind of take the average or come up with our own. It also kind of, I know it doesn't directly set a precedent, but as we move forward to maybe make some suggestions to revise the affordable housing policy, it's a way we can go. And it's like I say, it's clear to everybody. People can predict it and build it into when they're doing their rezonings. I like the idea that it's transparent and clear, at least as one path. Obviously, you can still negotiate, but as one option, so people kind of know in future what they're getting into. But in terms of today, I agree with you, Ron, or whoever it was that Greg that said it. Let's try to get to something, make a recommendation, and be done today because we don't want to delay this application any longer. Okay. Tim, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree that I think it should be on the extra, not the gross, because I don't see how we're charging them for development that's already there or including it in the charge. Yeah. And I would also agree that if we can come up with an actual recommendation today, for example, based on that, that would be good. Get that to council and then leave the problem of how we handle future contributions. Really give that some thought. Yeah, fair enough. So I feel like everybody's kind of leaning towards it's a combination of what the applicants proposed, which is some number of square feet plus at a certain dollar amount. And then what we're talking about, which is I think we're all in agreement, unless anybody strongly objects, raise your hand, the extra square footage. So however we word that, and Steph, I don't know if you're able to start sort of crafting a recommendation. I know it's very complex language.
I've been crafting one for about 45 minutes.
Okay, so I think it would be.
So I'll share what I have, and I do have the words extra square footage, which I don't think is industry term, but
no, well, we can wordsmith that but thank you. Yep.
Okay. What are you seeing?
Okay. Let's leave the 2 additional lots for later. We haven't really talked much about that yet. So let's just, move that down for now. That the following formula be used to calculate an amenity contributions to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. So it would be, maybe Daniel, I don't know if you want to contribute some of the terms here. It would be the additional square footage above the existing zoning, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, additional floor space. Maybe square space because we do work in square meters. Additional floor space granted, I don't know if that's the right word, granted beyond the existing zoning, and maybe in brackets 3 units at 375 square meters.
Sorry, at what?
375 square meters. And I like to leave that open because again, council might decide it's 7 lots or 9. So let's take the, so it's whatever additional floor space is granted beyond the existing zoning of 3 units.
So you've got an issue with existing.
Oh, yes, you're right. Existing zoning. Yeah.
Because existing zoning allows, it's on lot coverage and times floors of height. Yeah.
Okay. So additional floor space granted beyond the existing number of units, the number of units in the existing zoning.
Better say lots, because we're talking about lots.
Okay, lots, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well,
residential lots.
The zoning doesn't allow them subdivision, but it allows 3 dwellings on the lot, is what the current zoning allows.
Okay.
Okay, so the additional number of dwellings.
Granted beyond the existing number
of lots, we're saying dwellings?
Yeah.
Yes, we are saying dwellings.
Gotta use dwellings.
Granted beyond the number of dwellings allowed in the existing zoning. So we can say 3 dwellings. And so maybe 3 dwellings in brackets. And then I think we have to craft something to say we're now and then applying the new proposed maximum floor area. So I'd end the bracket after 3 dwellings.
period.
Uh,
I'm gonna
the
just make this
new
bigger, just so you-
maximum floor area, something like that.
Ah,
What are you doing?
well, I just.
She's making it bigger.
Robin's squinting, so I just wanted to. make it easier for
No, it's
her.
okay. It's okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right, okay, where are we?
So I'll start from me. Additional floor space granted beyond the number of dwelling units allowed in the existing zoning. Oh, okay. I think we need to additional floor space granted based on the following. I mean, we've already kind of said that. Based on the following facts or following calculation. I know we're sort of doing
Formula?
calculation. Sure, formula. And then bracket, yeah, and then another thing. So
Another bullet?
yeah,
Send it
another
out in
bullet.
a set of bullets that sort of, so it flows as a calculation.
Sorry, what did you
Yes,
say,
that's what I'm
Allison?
thinking. Yep, no, I think I'm
Yeah.
with you, Allison. I think I'm getting there. So the first bullet point is existing number of dwellings allowed is 3. And we can wordsmith this afterwards. Let's just kind of get the key point. So existing number of dwellings allowed is 3. And then the next bullet point, using the new maximum floor space of 375 square meters per unit.
For
And we
dwelling,
can, per dwelling, thank you. Yeah. Floor space,
375.
yeah, 300 square meters.
per dwelling.
Mhm.
Okay. 3 floor space of square meters per dwelling. So how would we say this? So the additional, calculate the new, oh, geez,
The additional number of dwellings allowed.
yeah. So the initial number of calculate the new number of dwellings allowed less the 3 already allowed times the new 375 square meters. That's what we're trying to get at.
Sorry, allowed less the,
No, okay, so
Less.
you want another bullet and you don't want it calculated. You want to say the new
Okay.
number of dwellings allowed is
Okay.
7.
Well, the new
No,
number of
come on.
dwellings allowed. I'd
Is.
like to leave that open because we don't know that it's 7 at the moment,
Okay, well,
right?
Okay, and then,
So
then
that-
your next
yeah.
thing is going to be, your next bullet is going to be the difference between A and then, yeah,
so you want.
Yeah, so-
One is A,
the new number of dwellings allowed of blank.
like that, the difference between A and B.
And then we've got to do the square footage, the maximum square footage.
So yeah, let's, I think we're getting there. So the first bullet point, let's do the existing number of dwellings allowed, 3 times the
No,
new
no, no.
maximum floor space. And that's A, right? Or whatever.
Okay, I would have done A being existing number of dwellings, B being new maximum floor space per dwelling.
Okay, okay.
C
Right.
being maximum floor space of existing,
Sorry, this is
dwelling.
B.
and then D being number of new dwellings allowed. Yeah, anyhow,
And I
we've got
do want
that.
to, we're getting there. And I do notice that the applicant has said in the chat that the smaller lots are to only have 200 square meters. Is that right, Daniel? So
Yeah.
the proposal at the moment is 7 lots at the 375 square meters, but they're asking potentially for an addition for then 6 lots at 375 and 3 lots at 200. Is that correct?
I would have to check because I think that's based on the draft bylaw that I sent to council at the February meeting. So I think then it would be 7 lots at 375 and then 2 more lots, like the 2 additional lots
Okay.
have a lesser floor area.
So I'd like to, thanks, Daniel. So I think I want to leave this formula open because we don't know what the decision of council is going to be in terms of numbers of lots and square feet. So it's basically saying the existing number of dwelling units at the 375, and then that comes off whatever the new gross floor area of the project is.
Yeah,
So, so maybe the first point should be the gross floor area of the proposal, and in brackets, dwellings times their maximum square floor plan or floor area. Does that make sense, Steph? So if you go make a new first bullet point.
So first is in this circle here or this?
No,
square?
no, exactly. Yeah. So where it
This
says
one?
existing number of dwellings, yeah, put that
Okay.
down. We'll put a new one. So gross floor area of the total proposal. Again, we can wordsmith that. And then in brackets, that would be dwellings times maximum square FSR or floor space.
SR?
FSR, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And we can call that, sorry to renumber things, that can be A.
Okay.
If we're
Well,
doing
let's
that.
worry about the numbering afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. And then it'll come also, then we have the existing number of dwellings currently allowed. We've got 3. So
That'd be
that's
B.
let's call it B. And then using and then the new maximum floor space of 375 square meters. Maybe we could take off using, doesn't really matter, but we'll make that C. And then we would put the
Hold on, hold on,
formula.
stop.
Yep, sorry.
No.
Yep,
that's good, just
that'll be
slowly just
C.
start. Mhm.
And so then the formula, so maybe get rid of those next 2 points. And the formula would be, yeah. So the formula would be A minus, and then in brackets, B times C. Is that what we're saying? So the idea is whatever the gross floor area, that's A. So whether it's 7 lots or 9 lots or 375 or 200, whatever that number ends up being is A. And then off of that, we take the 3 units at the 375 square feet. So B times C, and then that equals the contribution floor area. That's the calculation for the floor area. Yeah, contribution floor area. Is that Tim? I'm seeing your hand there. Yeah.
I think in the first bullet, you want GFA rather than FSR.
Times maximum.
No, because isn't
Daniel,
that FSR in the bylaw?
Daniel, what would the right term be for the dwellings times the
I mean, the gross
maximum
floor
floor
area,
space?
the housing policy talks about gross floor area. But the bylaw would be like maximum floor area.
Yeah, I'm going to say times maximum floor area, because I think that's kind of what it is. Rather than using some acronyms, let's just say
Yeah.
maximum floor area, because I think that's clear in the intention. So there's some maximum floor area being determined, and that, in this case, 375, might be 200 on some smaller lots.
You
So-
want to say maximum floor area per dwelling?
Maximum dwellings times maximum floor areas per dwelling. Yep, that's accurate. Yep, maximum floor area per dwelling.
And you need number of dwellings on the first bit of the bracket.
Yes, thank you. So Steph, that first one, gross floor area of the total proposal, in bracket, it says number of dwellings times maximum floor area per dwelling. I think that's really clear. That's A. We have the existing number of dwellings currently allowed, 3, and that equals B. And then the new maximum floor space of 375 meters per dwelling. And the formula is that total number at the beginning less the 3 allowed at the 375, and that's the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund contribution. So I think we need to make that clear. That's the square footage to be used in the calculation for the contribution.
Got the formula.
The formula, yeah, the formula for the
You-
square footage, this for the floor area, the square footage, the formula to calculate the floor area for
Yeah.
the
Addition-
AHRF contribution
floor
would
area.
be, yeah. Yeah, and just put that AHRF contribution, yeah, exactly, would be, and I think that's clear. Whew, okay, and then we're getting there. And then the next bullet point, so a white bullet point, yep, would
Yeah.
be in the following formula. Okay, I don't know what to word this here, because so it's times some amount, and maybe I'll have to look at my notes. So I have to get out of the full screen here. What do they call it in those other? Just trying to look for some words here as to how do they like the contribution, what they call that dollars per square foot. So the
Cash in lieu rate.
Yeah, so the cash, perfect, thank you. So the
That
cash
came
in
from
lieu
Emma
rate.
Cohen's chat.
Yep, and that's also in that Richmond one. So cash in lieu rate. Okay, so cash in lieu rate and so
Yeah.
do we want to? I yeah, anywhere, I think 5 to 10 sounds like that's the range. Richmond is 6 to 8. Victoria is 5 to 10. I feel like 7 is a reasonable number, but maybe we just, yeah. Yeah, per square foot. Yeah, unfortunately it's square foot, not square meters, but maybe that can be changed if needed. Does anybody have strong feelings that we should, I would be happy to land on say 7. That seems like a fair kind of middle ground based on everything else. Does anybody feel strongly about a different number?
What's the
Brad is
$10
good.
and
Oh, sorry. Allison first and then Fritz.
the $10 in from Richmond, from Victoria's is for,
I believe it's for additional density above and beyond what the OCP would allow. I
okay,
think
so
it's
that's
something
not
along those
relevant.
lines.
yeah. So we're fitting within the OCP. Yeah, okay.
Okay. Okay.
I think you should
Um,
keep the 5 to
Fritz.
10 because over the last few years, construction cost has more or less doubled.
Mhm.
So we'll do
Is it
this
ever
now.
going to be reasonable again?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Yeah, and I'm not sure how closely this relates to construction cost. I mean, you would think that it would, but I'm also not sure really where this number comes from. So we really are just relying on these other two precedents. So yeah, I mean, I'm also okay to just leave it at that. And we can say the research, you know, $5 to $10 per square foot be applied to the formula. Yeah, I'm happy to land on say 7, but if we want to leave that open, and that's up to council. Or would it be, yeah, should we say something like 7, you know, and in brackets, you know, a range of $5 to $10 was found in
7 just seems
in
totally
research.
arbitrary, Robin. I think 5 to 10 reflects the reality of things.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, it did come,
So-
the 7 came from Richmond, which I think is the closest comparable to what we're talking about, is 6 in the sort of city center, 8 outside the city center. So I just took the average of those. But yeah, I think if, sorry, Fritz, go ahead.
No, anyway, I was just gonna go back to the how expensive construction is, because the numbers
Yeah.
don't seem to relate to that.
Yeah.
But the next thing, I guess, is that we recommend that the Housing Advisory Committee recommended this a number of smaller units at 200
Yes.
square meters. That's next, right?
Yeah, that'll be next. So yeah, is
Okay,
everybody generally okay? I know this could probably use a little bit more wordsmithing, but is
Well, don't
everybody
you need
generally
a
okay?
third white bullet to
Okay, and
say
what
that
will that have?
the cash in lieu contribution
Yeah,
be additional floor area times the cash in lieu rate?
okay. Okay, so I think, does everybody agree with that?
Or the
in
floor
principle?
area, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and we can call that D and E if we want, if that's clearer, but I think we can sort of.
Yeah.
choose
But we haven't
additional
used
floor-
additional floor rate in the fourth little box up above.
We're gonna calculate the,
Formula
So
to
maybe-
calculate the floor area.
so maybe we call it the, sorry to be picky about the step. If you go into that
Okay.
fourth black bullet point,
Yeah,
maybe we say the formula to calculate the AHRF floor area contribution, and maybe we like italicize that or something, and that's like the floor area contribution.
okay,
So that's like a term,
okay.
and again, it could be, we could call that D if we want. I don't know.
Realistic definitions for this.
Yeah, I know, right?
recommendation.
And then do we call that? I don't know if it's
Equals
clear if
D,
we
I
call that
think.
D. So maybe after that italicized thing, that would be D.
In your brackets, yeah, equals A minus B times C equals D.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
No, right at the bottom, Steph.
Mhm. Oh, down here?
Well, I think,
Yeah.
no, I'm okay with
Yeah.
that. The floor area contribution is D, that's clear. And then I think, but you could do the formula of A minus B times C, yep, and then just put equals D at the end. And so we know clearly what D is. And then the
Okay.
cash in lieu rate of $5 to $10 per square foot. And then that's E. And that would have to be calculated off, like you'd have to do the square feet to square meters, you know, swap. So that could be done in math later. And then the cash in lieu contribution would be D times E. I think that's it. Just to be, I know it's, Ugh.
Capital D, but that's fine.
Yeah, so just that's it, and then delete all the rest of it. Yep, just D times E.
Woo!
Okay. So,
Sorry, Chris, we've got an accountant here.
no, that's okay.
I think Tim has his hand up.
So, oh, yeah, thank you. I can't see everybody. So, Tim, go ahead.
I think you've got to repeat in the fourth bullet there. You don't need to say for the, yeah, right. Take that out. Good. And as far as the $5 to $10 or $7 being arbitrary, the 5 to 10 is also going to be arbitrary, and the ultimate number that we land on is going to be arbitrary. So I think it's better to pick one now. Robin, I agree with you. Let's put 7 in there. If somebody wants to argue that, well, we can talk about it, but.
Yeah, so I'm okay with
keep-
putting 7, and then I like how you've put in brackets stuff based on comparator community rates, and we can put of $5 to $10.
Okay.
And I think that's good. Council can see it, then they can choose, hey, let's go to 5, let's go to 10, like that's their, but we're going to recommend 7.
Yeah.
And then we can hopefully give all these papers that we've also had, that if council does want to look at those, you know, read more detail as to understand those differences, then they can do it. Yeah, these rate of, yeah, okay. So hopefully
in that little fourth box, you don't need the first equals D. The formula to calculate the AF is, and that's all you, yeah, get rid of that one.
Yeah.
Whatever, and we
So
can
that-
capitalize these because we're creating new words.
So we've got A, we've got B, we've got C, we've got D.
and we got E is that
Yeah.
that dollars per square foot, and then it's D times E. Okay, I think that's in line with what we've talked about and generally agreed upon. It is 11:10. We still want to talk a little bit about the lots. So does that work for everybody? And Steph, we need a motion in a second, like to that this is a recommendation.
Yes, please.
You need that? Okay, so
No, but do you have that? Do you have the additional lots in here now with 200 square?
no,
meters?
not yet. No,
Oh,
let's
okay. All right.
can we just do this one
Separate.
first so we can at least get this one
Okay.
locked in, and then we can talk about the extra lots. Okay, so I am going to move. I think I'm allowed to do that. I'm going to move this as the proposal for how to calculate the cash in lieu proposal. Can I have a seconder? And I can't see everybody, so you might have to speak up. Fritz is seconding, and again, I can't see. Can you maybe stop sharing your screen for a minute so I can actually
Oh, sure.
see everybody? Step. No, yeah, just because then it's nice to just kind of be able to see everybody. So everybody who's in favor of approving this recommendation, that looks like unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, so now let's move on to the discussion. Do we want to make a recommendation of the additional lots? So right now, there's 7, and so maybe Daniel, do you want to clarify kind of where we're at now? I don't know where we're at in the 7 versus 9.
Sure. Council gave first reading to the bylaw that has the 7 lot proposal. As
They
I
didn't
discussed
even talk
research-
about the other one.
Yeah, the report had presented it as an alternative, but it wasn't a focus. And, you know, I think at that meeting, council was running late and we had lots on the agenda. So I don't know, you know, I just honestly don't know if council fully considered it and didn't move it, or didn't discuss it in depth, or like didn't consider it.
So yeah, thanks, Daniel. So I think that let's just keep, Steph, I'm not sure if you're able to go back and find our recommendation from that time, but basically I think we should just repeat our recommendation, because I don't think it's necessarily changed, and it was just a recommendation we made. Council didn't have the time and capacity at first reading to analyze it and discuss it. So I think we just repeat the same recommendation. I don't know if you've got it. Oh,
Yeah,
maybe
I have it.
Daniel.
I just
Daniel's
put it
got
in the
it too.
chat.
Okay,
Oh.
perfect. So maybe just for ease, I will read it out.
Or can
The
I put
Hort.
it-
Oh yeah, do you want to share your screen if
Yeah.
you want to? Yep. The Housing Advisory Committee supports, and that we say lot 3 be considered, and so it's that middle bullet point. Lot 3 be considered as an opportunity to provide a few smaller lots to create diverse housing options. Yeah. So I mean, I think we put that in. I'm not sure. Does anybody feel
Yeah,
that it
then
needs
we're
to be
recommending
altered?
2.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the trick.
Okay,
But-
so we recommend that maybe we can be specific. Daniel, what lot is that larger one that we were contemplating on
Lot
their
3.
proposed? Lot
It's
3?
lot 3, but
Okay.
confusingly in the bylaw, I believe it's area 2. So that may
Okay,
be,
so maybe we put lot 3 / area 2, and Daniel knows what we're talking about, so he can explain that to council. That lot 3 area 2 be considered, be considered as 3 lots instead of 1. I think that's what we're talking about. 3 smaller lots instead of 1, with a
No,
maximum
that's-
floor area of 200 square meters. I'm just going to capture that. And
Sorry, at the maximum, what's the word there? At the maximum?
at a maximum of 200 square meters per dwelling.
It's a,
So that's kind of,
also,
yeah,
you know,
go ahead, Wayne.
it's not 3 smaller lots. It is small. It is 2 small lots added to or split off the 3.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it's
the
one
lot is
huge
really
lot.
it's really large, lot 3, and so the idea is
Yeah.
to create 2 modest
Okay.
lots. There may be 5,000 square feet. There may be a 1/16 of an acre or a quarter of an acre. You know.
Okay, so instead of the
that is-
1 large, we're saying take some of that and make 2 small and still have 1 largish one. Is that what we're
Yes.
talking about? Okay, so there's
So you
still
wanna
7
say-
largish lots, but there's 2 new small ones.
Yes.
That recommend that 2 small lots be created within lot 3 for a total of, yeah.
could it be
Okay.
permitted instead of
Yeah, there we go,
created?
comprising 1 large
Yeah.
lot and 2 small lots. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then it says that it has a maximum floor space of 200 square meters each, and then it has to provide the same. It adds to the contribution again, so that same formula that you just calculated out with the A, B, C, D, and E would repeat itself for those additional lots. And then maybe you should also mention that from the previous meetings, it became clear that creating these 2 additional lots is key to the developer to make this project a success. So to kind of leave it half out, and that doesn't make any sense, because then the only thing you've done is created a formula for amenity the contribution to the housing fund, but it hasn't done anything because it didn't make the proposal economical, because in the previous meeting it became pretty clear that without having these additional lots, nothing's going to happen.
Mhm.
So this is
can
the
we,
key part.
yeah, I appreciate it. So Steph, can we add a couple of whereases at the beginning? I think that's how
Yes.
to do it. So whereas smaller lots will create more diverse housing opportunities on the island. Because I think that's, for me anyways, that's the main driver, is that, you know, we're creating smaller lots, which in theory will be less expensive than the bigger lots. And so it's slightly more affordable comparatively speaking, and it will create some diversity. And then whereas, you know, I don't know, what do we say? The applicant has indicated 2 additional lots will make the project financially viable.
And it has the same contribution to the affordable housing fund.
I don't
mean,
think
it's-
we need to add that, Fritz. I only say that because we crafted the formula very specifically to allow for this. So
No,
the
but the
first.
formula's got the 375 in it.
Not the 200.
not
No,
the
no. So
200.
can we go back to the other thing we just crafted and passed?
It's here in small, I'll make it big.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah. So we said very specifically, gross floor area of the total proposal, number of dwellings times maximum floor area per dwelling. So that's going to be whatever the formula is. So if it's 7 lots at 375 and 2 at 200, if it's 7 at
Okay.
375, I did that very specifically. So it's whatever the gross floor area ends up being.
Yeah, but you know, you're not a good salesperson, because because you want this to happen and you forget about that, because for council, for the community, for people who want more affordable housing, the key thing is that yes, you get a more a better mix of housing. There, instead of just saying the way I would write in why it's even attractive to the neighborhood, because, you know, for example, people can stay in the neighborhood. Now there's something in it for the neighborhood to think about, right? It's not just like, you know, you have to make it a bit real. And then for council to consider the additional 2 lots is for that purpose. The second purpose is to make it economical. And the third purpose is to increase the contribution to the affordable housing fund.
Okay.
Now you do
I'm
3
taking.
things by making one decision. Okay.
Yep, I get that, Fritz. Yeah, I'm hearing you. So let's do another whereas. I don't think we need that one you just started typing, because I
Okay.
think where we could if you want to wordsmith, Fritz, if you want to think about if you want to change the first whereas where I've got smaller lots. will
I
create more
would
diverse
change
housing
that to in the area, in the South Bowen area.
opportunities in that neighborhood. Why don't we just say in that
Yeah.
neighborhood? Yeah, I think that's what Fritz is getting at. I appreciate that. And then we will do another whereas, which I think is also fair because it makes it clearer. So a third and final whereas, hopefully, that is the I don't know how to word it exactly, but the whereas the additional floor area provided in the additional lots will have and I'm using too many words, additional will also add to the contribution to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund, something along those lines. It
Proportional.
can probably be
right?
worded a little bit better, but that's the idea. Is like, so just noting these extra smaller lots will create diverse options in the neighborhood. They're making the project more viable for the proponent, and the additional floor area will provide additional an additional contribution to the Affordable Housing
The
Reserve.
second
Provide or,
whereas,
like, allow, or
the second whereas needs to be financially, not financial.
Right.
So sorry, let me just reread that third one. Whereas the additional floor area provided by the additional lots will also add to the contribution of, that's close enough for me.
Is it
Jim, did I
provided?
see your hand?
Yeah, I think we, in the last paragraph, I think we need to specify that the maximum of 200 is only for the 2 additional lots.
Yeah,
Yes.
so maybe we put comprising one large lot. So in the middle here, Steph. So if we go comprising one large lot and in brackets, maximum 375 square meters dwelling.
I think the large lot area was going to have a covenant on it that it wasn't going to have any development. Oh, no, it was going to have a one
Hang on,
house. Never,
let's
yeah,
address-
never mind.
Okay,
One house,
yeah,
yeah.
whew, okay. And 2 additional smaller lots, and then in brackets, maximum 200 square meters per dwelling. Then that's crystal clear, right? So I think that makes it really clear what our intention is. And then just say, take that
Fix the
additional, that
spelling
word
of
additional.
additional.
Well, take the additional out. Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
just saying those 2 additional small lots. Okay, so
We
how
go
are we
back
feeling
to
about
the-
this, everybody?
Okay.
Last paragraph, second line, lost should be lots.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Okay.
Are we
So-
okay with this third bullet though, whereas the additional,
Floor area provided by the additional lots.
is the word provided here, or?
Permitted,
Will-
floor area permitted. I
allow-
think, Daniel, you'd said that, permitted by
Yeah.
the. I don't think it really matters, to be honest, provided permitted. I don't think that that changes the meaning. The additional floor area provided by the additional lots will also add to the contribution to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
It may be a little
Yeah.
clumsy, but it gets the point across. Any other comments before I read it a final time and hopefully we can vote on it? And I can't see your hand, so do, because everybody's on my screen. So do speak up if yeah, okay, hearing none. I'm going to read this out and then hopefully we can move it. Whereas smaller lots will create more diverse housing opportunities in the neighborhood, and whereas the applicant has indicated that 2 additional lots will make the project financially viable, and whereas the additional floor area provided by the additional lots will also add to the contribution to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund, therefore be it resolved that the Housing Advisory Committee recommend that 3 lots be permitted in Lot 3, Area 2, comprising 1 large lot, maximum 375 square meters dwelling, and 2 additional smaller lots, maximum of 200 square meters per dwelling. Okay, does somebody want to move that one?
I'll move it.
Okay, Tim, I feel like Fritz, you should second that one because
Oh, it's just
You're really
wondering who's
big
going to
proponent.
second and third and fourth and fifth.
Just hang on a second. Daniel looks like he's thinking here. Are you okay
Oh.
with the
Oh,
wording, Daniel?
no, I'm okay. Yeah.
Okay.
you're okay?
Daniel.
Okay, no, we're wordsmithing. Okay, I'll second it. And then is everybody in favor of approving this motion as written?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Yay. Tammy came in basically on time. Oh, we do have one more item though. So, okay. Thank you, everybody. That was that was a lot of work. And I'm very glad we kind of came to something that I think we're all happy with and comfortable. So, okay, let's see where we're at in the agenda. we had, we have two more items, I think, quickly. So the Housing Accelerator Fund with Daniel, and then with Allison giving us a report on the conference she went to. So we've only got 8 minutes left.
Well, I can throw my comments in with Daniel's on the Housing Accelerator Fund.
Okay, great. So Daniel, sorry, we've only got 8 minutes. If you want to sort of introduce it, we can certainly add it to the agenda next time. I don't know if there's a time factor, but yeah, go ahead.
It's a very time-sensitive grant program.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll say really simply, I guess, the federal government has put out a grant called a Housing Accelerator Fund. And essentially it's to provide grant funding based on communities saying, we're going to identify targets to accelerate our housing growth. And then they provide funding based on your projected growth above your baseline growth rate. So you would say, we project to grow this much over the next 3 years is the timeline. And then we're going to make these changes, and that's going to accelerate our supply of housing. And then you are funded based on that.
And you've got to actually have a building permit to get the final funding.
Correct. And then funding is dependent on actually delivering that number of permits.
Yeah. And it's in the next 3 years, right? There's
in the next 3 years, which is
timeline.
a challenge for some of the potential initiatives.
Mhm.
And I'll say it, maybe I'll share my.
And the grant application timeline is this summer.
Is this summer. They said that applicants will open early summer and there'll be one intake period. They're talking about potentially funding. They're not quite sure on their numbers because it depends on how much intake they have. But essentially they say it would be, they would provide funding of something in the order of $20,000 per additional unit people could say they're providing, with over and above that for affordable or a sort of missing middle initiative. So when I did the math, I was looking, it was like, oh, if we said, this many affordable housing units, essentially it would be 40,000 per unit for those based on their projection. And I'll just share, this is what I haven't had a chance to do yet, but essentially they're looking for us to say, what's the current number of dwellings in a community? What's the total number projected to be permitted without the Housing Accelerator Fund? So that's kind of like our past growth rate or our growth targets. So what's the growth rate? And then what's the housing supply based on our initiatives? So in this case, this community had really simple math and said, okay, we're actually going to add an extra 1,000 units. Our annual housing supply growth rate is 2.67, and there'll be an increase of 14.29%. And you need to say you have a 1.1% annual growth rate, which we do depending how I look at it. And that then the initiatives will promote that above by at least 10% above that number. And they're they have sample initiatives that they can do, and some of those are fairly straightforward and some are more challenging. And the interesting thing with the fund too is that the funding doesn't have to go necessarily to the initiatives. So you can use the funding for things like, which doesn't really apply to Bone, but you can use the funding for things like repairing existing affordable housing, even though they say, well, that wouldn't actually provide any additional housing units. But your initiatives could be things like, not relevant to Bone, but other places, we're going to permit secondary suites. So it doesn't actually cost necessarily anything, doesn't cost anything in terms of a bylaw change, or we'll permit, additional dwellings in areas.
Yeah, but you have to achieve that, right? Like it actually
but you
has
have
to be
achieve that.
achieved.
Yeah, and so I know, almost one of the early things that comes to my mind is like, we would say, well, our growth in Snug Cove is constrained by the sewer capacity. And so we would use the money to improve the sewer, which would lead to growth, but it wouldn't happen within that 3-year timeline.
Yeah.
Because we would, if they gave us money, we'd say, great, now we can commission a study to
But
whatever.
we're going to have to have those building permits to get the final.
We wouldn't get building permits within 3 years.
Yeah, so you've got this chicken and egg. And there was a lot of talk at the conference about the missing middle, like, townhouses, row houses, low rise, 5 floors or less, multi-unit buildings. And I don't think we allow anything higher than 3 or 4, so we'd fit in that. But and then we had both MP and then we had the provincial housing minister, Ravi Kavalon, spoke, and they are proceeding with the rezoning, with the provincial legislation for rezonings to be mandated for having on single family lots, being able to add duplexes, triplexes and stuff like that. So
Right.
a lot of people raised issues there about where's the money for the infrastructure that's going to be needed if we're going to have all this population increase. And one of the other interesting things, which doesn't apply to us as much, but does apply to the Lower Mainland, which puts pressure on our issues, is I think the speaker from the Board of Trade indicated that you need 5,000 new units a year to allow just for immigration alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then the housing, the Construction Industry Association people, the uncertainty with housing, you know, the housing costs and everything, they can't estimate anything more than sort of 30 days out as to what it's going to cost them when they're bidding on the contract. And,
Yeah. So
and
in the interest of time, we've only got a couple minutes left. Daniel, what would you like from the Housing Advisory Committee? Is it a recommendation that, like, 'cause it's the municipality that will apply, right? Like you will
Yes.
come up with something and you'll apply. So what would you like from us? Considering we might meet, say, in a month, mid-May, and then it's due in July or something. So yeah, what do you need from us today?
I mean, I guess today it would be, you know, initial thoughts, like if the committee thinks, yes, this is something worth pursuing, you know, as we work through it, it may be that it doesn't make sense for Bowen, but even just
Mhm.
recommendation that, you know, Housing Advisory
Yeah.
Committee recommends that, you know, BIM should pursue the housing
Pursue it.
accelerator, pursue an
Yeah.
application or something.
Yeah,
And
so I'd
then
be
we would-
prepared to, yeah.
Or
prepared to
aim
see.
to
Do you
come
have any
back in May
idea?
with more details.
how many units or how many new dwellings we have to build to meet that? I have something about 10% above our target or something in my mind, but I can't remember.
Mhm.
I'd see Natasha's joined us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've asked
Um,
Natasha to start looking at it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, why don't we make a motion that, yes, let's, we recommend that the municipality put in plan to apply, and that we can revisit this at our May meeting and put it on the agenda, and we can, if staff has ideas that they want to bring back, and we can discuss, we can brainstorm what we think good initiatives would be. And we can also, we did a housing targets report last year. So maybe that's a great time, and we wanted to have a committee of the whole to discuss it, or, you know, all the things. So maybe that's a great chance to bring that back onto the forefront. And for our new members, we can review that housing targets report, review this proposed accelerator fund, and, you know, make some suggestions to help the planning department with their application. Does that make sense? Sorry, that was a very long, wordy kind of thing for Steph to
Or
write.
do we
But
want to wait and discuss it? When's our May meet? This isn't our May meeting. All right, this is April.
no, yeah,
So-
I don't think we have it
Yeah,
set yet.
and
But yeah,
Are we?
let's just say
I-
we recommend that that BIM pursue it, and that we will discuss it at our May meeting in more detail.
Oh,
I guess by pursue, do you mean pursue making the application or continue to
Yeah.
investigate the feasibility of making an application?
I'm happy to word that whichever way that makes sense.
And then we can talk about the feasibility at our May meeting.
Daniel, does that wording sound good? The
Yeah, I think so.
feasibility of
Not
an
necessarily.
application?
Yeah, so not apply, but like,
To continue to explore the feasibility?
yeah,
Or to explore the feasibility of
yeah.
the Housing Accelerator Fund for Bowen or something like that.
Applicability?
Feasibility, I think, is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't need to worry too much of the housing for Bowen, and that specific initiatives we discussed at the May HAC meeting consideration.
I think it's not applicability as much as as whether we would be able to even come up with
Yeah.
the numbers or the calculations in time for an application. There was a lot of number of comments about summer was pretty short time frame.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I might just ask you, Steph, at the end to be discussed at the May HAC meeting in conjunction with a review of the housing targets report from 2022. Okay, I'm going to move this one considering we're already over time. So I'm going to move. Can I have a second? And I can't see everybody, so you might have to speak
Second.
out. Second, thank you, Allison. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Not hearing any objections. Okay, that's moved. Excellent. So I think the last thing is just to, if we can figure out a date for the next meeting. I always like to do that while we're all in the room.
Did I propose one?
Yes, please.
Did I put one in the? Sorry, I'm just.
Throw it out verbally.
Yeah, just
Sorry, I'm
Is
just
it in
getting.
the- oh,
into the
May
software.
26th, May 26th, Friday, May 26th at 9:30 a.m. That was your proposal. Friday, May 26th. I'm just getting my calendar up here. Friday, May 26th. That's fine for me.
Fine for me.
Yeah, that's fine for me. It's Lois.
Fine for me,
Okay,
Jim.
Same time, 9:30.
great.
Yeah.
9:30 that Friday, and let's allow 2 hours only because, you know, I hopefully we'll finish faster, but if it is a robust conversation, it'd be good to have the time in everyone's calendar. Great. Okay. Sorry, we're a little over time, but I think great work today, everybody. I'm really
work.
pleased that we got through that, and I think we all landed somewhere we're reasonably happy with. Excellent. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day, and we will see you in May.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Rob.
Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.